But I would, Mr. Sponsor, I'm still not sure about some of the specifics of the bill itself, and I apologize for not being able to get with you beforehand. As you know, I would that's my preference. But I was also under the impression when this bill ran last time that Memphis would not be impacted and that all agreements that were in place would hold. Something seems to have changed. I'm not quite sure why, and that's why I'm having to ask questions today, if you would. Well, I guess the first thing is, how is it that Memphis is included now and it wasn't then?
Representative Carter.
All right. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Hardaway, let me explain. Memphis has always been in the bill. It has never been discussed about releasing it, other than conversations I had on several occasions in the Comptroller's office about their consideration to do the same thing that Johnson City did. Now, let me address the Memphis issue since that's been raised. We have heard tonight that Memphis is going to lose $100 million. In the Comptroller's office, the city of Memphis told me if 100% of the people de-annexed, they would lose $27 million. How do we get from 27 to 100? Let me explain that. The bill provides that only those residences may have a referendum to withdraw from the city. Commercial and industrial areas may petition to withdraw, but that is solely within the purview of the city. Why? Because that's where their major property tax and sales tax revenue comes from. To allow commercial and industrial properties to withdraw is a bridge too far and would harm the cities financially, in my opinion. Now, what Memphis is saying to you is what they said to me in the Comptroller's office. We're going to lose $27 million. I'll come back to that. But when I read in the newspaper, they're going to lose $100 million. When I add up all of their figures that they handed out, the only way I can get to $100 million is take the $27 million of the residences, then take out all the commercial, industrial, and sales tax. So if the city of Memphis wants to voluntarily give up $73 million a year that this bill does not require them to do, that is their decision. That is a local decision. That is not our decision. Think about this. If 100% of the people withdraw and $27 million comes out of the city budget, right? Absolutely not. The general obligation debt of the city of Memphis that accrued during the annexation will continue to be paid. There is a bond outstanding. If you're in the city of Memphis and you withdraw, you will have a lien on your property called property tax, which will exist for another 18 years, 2 months. Now think about this. If you run a business and you continue to get paid all of your debt, but you don't have to give a product nor sell nor provide anything to your customer, how in the world would that harm you financially? Remember that upon the de-annexation, the city of Memphis no longer owes any service whatsoever to these parties. They continue to get all their debts paid, but they do not have to provide any services. Now, the only way they could possibly be harmed by this, in all candor and all honesty, is if they are not providing any service. Now, no one's ever considered that, but if in fact the city is not providing a service, then that may hurt them in their cash flow.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To be clear, Mr. Sponsor, no matter where the commercial, industrial property may be, even if it's not contiguous, it is up to the city to determine whether to de-annex those parcels, even if it's not contiguous land?
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Chairman Carter.
Thank you. Representative Hardaway, only the city can permit de-annexation of commercial or industrial areas. I would not, even if I had big ears or little hands, put something like that in a bill. Only residential homes are subject to referendum without the approval of the city.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the 18 years of property tax revenue that will flow back into the city, this is based merely on general obligation bonds that are outstanding.
Yes, sir.
What happens in terms of refinancing those bonds? Would the obligation be for the original tax amount, or would that tax amount be adjusted accordingly?
That tax,
Chairman Carter.
that tax amount will be fixed on the date of withdrawal. And if there are, say, 15 bonds, 18 years, 16 years, 12 years, 11 years, the payment required of the person through property tax will decrease as each bond is paid off. If there are additional sums borrowed after the referendum is held, the withdrawing parties will not be responsible for those new increases. Ladies and gentlemen, are you aware that Memphis is borrowing $75 to $90 million a year deficit? Every year. There are a lot of folks here that don't want to be hung on that $75 to $90 million additional debt. They're already going to be hung on all of the general obligation debt that was accrued during their part in the city.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if there is a decrease or if there is an increase due to refinancing, restructuring those bonds, it does not impact the initial structure of that payback. The tax rate would be the same no matter what happens down the road in restructuring bond debt.
Yes, sir, but if I understand the question correctly, if refinancing or additional debt occurs after those parties have left the city, that does not affect those parties. Yes, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if there's a decrease in the refinance process, then the city is not obligated to pass those savings on.
If it is done after the withdrawal, no. And I think that's what your questions are concerning. After they withdraw, they'll receive no services. Their liabilities will be fixed.
Representative Todd, your name was called. Did you seek recognition?
Yes, ma'am, and I won't call what I usually call. There's a lot of information. Representative Carter is exactly right on the numbers and figures that he gave with regard to this. Myself and also Representative McManus was in the comptroller's office last Monday, when we met with him and went over these numbers with an official from the city of Memphis and talked about these numbers and what transpired. If you look at the map, in which most of you don't look at the map, it looks like Swiss cheese on a map down there in our area. And let me just say this. In response to those residents in Cordova, in 1998, I represented all those folks in Cordova. They didn't have anyone to